What I witnessed 3 days ago in Lagos will haunt American foreign policy for generations. I've spent 52 years studying the mechanics of imperial collapse, watched the Soviet Union disintegrate from inside Gorbachev's inner circle, advised 3 administrations on maintaining dollar dominance. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that what happened last Thursday represents the single most dangerous moment for American power since the fall of Saigon. My phone started vibrating during a classified briefing at the Council on Foreign Relations. The message came from a former student now serving in Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control. 5 words that made my blood run cold. Nigeria just killed the dollar. I need you to understand something that nobody in Washington is willing to admit yet. For the first time since 1971, when Nixon severed the gold standard and created the petrodollar system, a major oil-producing nation has openly defied American monetary supremacy and survived the immediate retaliation. Not just survived, actually strengthened their position. And the response from the Trump administration, the explicit threat of military intervention to enforce currency compliance, has revealed something terrifying about where American strategy has arrived. We've become the empire that threatens war not to protect allies or defeat enemies, but simply to force other countries to use our money. Think about what that admission means. Think about what that tells the rest of the world about our desperation. Nigeria's central bank governor made the announcement at 9:47 local time last Thursday morning. They would begin accepting payment for crude oil exports in yuan, naira, rupees, and a basket of African currencies, effective immediately. No gradual transition, no pilot program, no consultation with Washington, just a simple declaration of economic sovereignty that sent shockwaves through every currency trading desk, from New York to London to Tokyo. Within 6 hours, Trump had posted 17 messages on social media, each one more unhinged than the last, culminating in a direct threat that if Nigeria didn't reverse this decision within 72 hours, they would face consequences that would make our sanctions on Iran look merciful. He didn't say military action explicitly, but 3 separate Pentagon sources confirmed to me that AFRICOM had been placed on elevated alert status and that contingency planning for strikes on Nigerian oil infrastructure had moved from theoretical to operational. But here's what makes this moment so significant, and why I'm speaking publicly despite the personal and professional risks. Nigeria didn't back down, not even for a second. Their president went on national television, and I watched this broadcast live from my office, and he said something that I've been expecting to hear from some country for the past decade, but still shocked me when it finally came. He said, "We are grateful for America's past partnership, but we will not subordinate our economic future to threats. If Washington believes their currency deserves global dominance, they should compete for that privilege rather than demand it through coercion. We have chosen partners who respect our sovereignty." Then he announced that China had agreed to provide air defense systems, that Russia would accelerate energy technology transfers, and that India had committed to tripling infrastructure investment. The entire speech lasted 11 minutes. By the time it ended, the architecture of global power had fundamentally shifted. I've been tracking these developments through sources most analysts don't have access to. There's a network of finance ministry officials across what they call the global majority countries. That's their term for the non-Western world. And they've been coordinating this move for almost 4 years. I first heard about it in late 2021 from a Brazilian central banker I've known since his graduate school days. He told me over dinner in Sao Paulo that a small group of countries were building what he called the parallel system, not designed to destroy the dollar, not motivated by anti-American ideology, just a practical alternative for countries tired of being sanctioned, surveilled, and subordinated every time they made economic decisions Washington disapproved of. He showed me technical specifications for a clearing system that would allow direct currency swaps without touching SWIFT or any American-controlled payment infrastructure. I remember asking him whether the United States would allow this to happen. He laughed and said, "John, you still don't understand. They can't stop it because they don't control the underlying relationships anymore. We're not asking permission." That conversation kept me awake for weeks because I recognized the pattern from historical precedent. This is exactly how British financial dominance collapsed between 1914 and 1,945. Not through military defeat, though 2 world wars certainly accelerated the decline, but through competitive institution building by rising powers who offered better terms to peripheral economies. The United States didn't defeat the British Empire through conquest. We defeated it through the Marshall Plan, through the Bretton Woods system, through offering war-torn nations access to American markets and capital on terms more favorable than London could match. We built alternative institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, the United Nations, and we made participation in those institutions more attractive than continued subordination to British imperial preference. Now China is doing exactly the same thing to us, and we're responding the way Britain should have but didn't, with threats and sanctions, and desperate attempts to maintain monopoly control over systems that only work when everyone participates voluntarily. The Nigerian decision didn't happen in isolation. It was the culmination of a sequence of events that American intelligence agencies either failed to detect or detected but couldn't figure out how to counter. In March of last year, Nigeria signed what they called a comprehensive strategic partnership with China. The public documents covered the usual infrastructure projects, ports and railways and power plants. But there was a classified annex that outlined currency swap arrangements and digital payment integration. I've seen portions of that annex through sources I won't identify. The technical details are complex, but the strategic implication is simple. Nigeria can now trade with China, Russia, India, Brazil, and 17 African nations without ever converting their currency to dollars. The transactions happen through a distributed ledger system that China's central bank has been developing for years, completely outside American oversight or control. In July, there was a meeting in Johannesburg that nobody in Western media covered. Finance ministers from 23 countries, representing about 40% of global GDP and 60% of the world's population, gathered under the pretext of a BRICS expansion discussion. But according to 3 people who attended those closed-door sessions, the real agenda was coordinating the transition away from dollar dependence. They established a timeline, identified which countries would move first, and created a mutual defense pact, their term, where if America sanctioned one participant for de-dollarization, the others would accelerate their own transitions and provide economic support to the targeted nation. Nigeria was always going to be the test case because they have everything that makes them perfect for this role. They're large enough that their decision matters, they have resources that global markets need, they're not militarily threatening, so America can't justify invasion on security grounds, and they have enough partners willing to support them that sanctions would hurt us more than them. When Trump issued his threat last Thursday, he walked directly into the trap that these countries had prepared. Every word he posted on social media, every threat of economic warfare, every hint of military action, all of it served to validate the exact argument that Nigeria and their partners have been making to fence-sitting nations for the past year. They've been telling countries across Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia that dependence on American financial systems is a national security vulnerability because Washington will weaponize that dependence the moment you make decisions contrary to American interests. Trump just proved their case better than any propaganda campaign ever could. Within 24 hours of his threats, I received messages from contacts in Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana, and Senegal telling me that their governments were accelerating plans to diversify away from dollar reserves. Malaysia's Prime Minister gave a speech calling for an Asian monetary fund independent of American influence. Brazil and Argentina announced they were expanding their local currency settlement system to include any Latin American nation that wanted to participate. The Pentagon understands the trap, even if Trump doesn't. I spoke yesterday with a 2-star general who works on African strategy, and he told me something that perfectly captures the impossible position America now faces. He said, if we do nothing, Nigeria gets away with this, and 10 other countries follow within a month. If we intervene militarily, we prove we're the aggressive hegemon they claim we are, and 50 countries start building alternatives immediately. If we sanction them, we demonstrate that dollar access is a political weapon and validate every argument for de-dollarization. We literally have no good options because we spent the last 2 decades teaching the world that American power exists to serve American interests, and everyone else is just along for the ride. He's right. And the fact that smart people inside the system recognize this, but can't change course, tells you everything about how far we've already fallen. I need to explain why this matters beyond currency markets and trade statistics, because the implications go to the heart of what kind of world we're moving into. The dollar's global dominance has allowed the United States to do something no other country in history has been able to do. We can print money, actual paper and digital currency, with nothing backing it except faith in American institutions. And the rest of the world accepts that currency as payment for real goods and services. We import more than we export. We consume more than we produce. We spend more than we earn. And we've been able to maintain this arrangement for 50 years because everyone needs dollars to buy oil, to settle international debts, to hold as reserves. That system, economists call it the exorbitant privilege, has allowed us to finance our military, our lifestyle, our entire position in the world through what is essentially a global tax that everyone pays by holding and using our currency. Nigeria's decision, if it holds and spreads, ends that privilege. Not immediately, not catastrophically, but through a steady erosion that accelerates with each country that joins the alternative system. As demand for dollars decreases, the value of dollars decreases. As the value decreases, our ability to import goods at artificially cheap prices decreases. As import prices rise, inflation rises. As inflation rises, living standards fall. The American middle class has been built on cheap imported goods made possible by dollar dominance. That entire structure becomes unsustainable in a world where we actually have to earn the currency we spend rather than simply printing it and having others accept it. But there's something even more fundamental at stake here, and this is what keeps me up at night. The post-1945 international order was built on a bargain. America would provide security guarantees and access to our markets, and in exchange, other countries would accept American leadership in setting global rules. That bargain worked for decades because American leadership generally coincided with global stability and prosperity. Yes, we pursued our interests, but those interests were broad enough and our vision generous enough that most countries benefited from the system. Somewhere in the past 20 years, that bargain broke down. We started treating the international system not as a mutual benefit arrangement, but as a tool for American advantage. We sanctioned countries for making choices we didn't like. We surveilled allies and adversaries alike. We withdrew from agreements when they constrained our freedom of action, but demanded compliance when they served our interests. We turned global institutions into weapons aimed at competitors, while exempting ourselves from the rules we insisted others follow. Nigeria's defiance is the bill coming due for those decisions. They're not acting out of anti-American hostility or ideological opposition to Western values. They're making a rational calculation that partnership with China, Russia, and India offers them more respect, more investment, and more sovereignty than continued alignment with Washington. And here's the thing that American policymakers refuse to accept: that calculation is correct. China builds infrastructure in Africa without demanding political reforms or imposing austerity conditions. Russia provides military equipment without lectures about human rights. India shares technology without insisting on intellectual property protections that benefit Western corporations. These aren't better partners in some moral sense, but they're better partners in the practical sense that matters to governments trying to develop their economies and maintain their independence. The European reaction to this crisis has been the most revealing indicator of how far American influence has declined. I have relationships with senior officials in multiple European foreign ministries, and every single one has told me privately that they advise their governments not to support American threats against Nigeria. Not because they love de-dollarization — European countries benefit enormously from dollar dominance too — but because they recognize that defending economic coercion today will legitimize economic coercion against them tomorrow. Germany doesn't want to establish a precedent that accepting yuan for trade justifies sanctions. France doesn't want to validate the principle that currency choice is subject to military threat. They're protecting their own future flexibility while watching American power erode in real time. I've been teaching courses on hegemonic transition for 30 years, And I always tell my students that the defining characteristic of declining powers is their inability to adapt strategy to changing circumstances. They continue pursuing policies that worked in the past, even as the conditions that made those policies effective disappear. Britain kept trying to maintain colonial control through military force, even as the economic basis for colonialism evaporated. The Soviet Union kept trying to impose ideological conformity, even as the appeal of communist economics died. Now America keeps trying to enforce global dominance through threats, even as our capacity to make those threats credible diminishes, and the willingness of other countries to accept our dominance disappears. Trump's response to Nigeria is a perfect example. He's threatening consequences he can't deliver against a country that has alternatives he refuses to acknowledge. And every day this standoff continues, proves to the world that American power isn't what we claim it is. What happens next will determine whether we manage this transition peacefully or stumble into conflicts that could spiral beyond anyone's control. If Nigeria holds firm, and I believe they will, because they've already passed the point of no return, then we're going to see a cascade of similar decisions across the developing world. Trump will threaten each one, accomplish nothing except accelerating the very trend he's trying to prevent. And within 5 years, the dollar's role in international trade will have shrunk by 30 to 40%. That's not speculation. That's the mathematical result of current trajectories continuing. The American establishment will rage against this outcome, blame China and Russia and ungrateful client states. But the truth is simpler and harder to accept. We built a system based on dominance when we should have built one based on partnership. We demanded compliance when we should have earned cooperation. We threatened consequences when we should have offered benefits. And now the world is choosing the future that we refuse to offer them. A multipolar order where America is one important power among several rather than the indispensable hegemon we imagined ourselves to be. That future is arriving, whether Washington accepts it or not, and Nigeria just announced its arrival to anyone willing to see what's actually happening.